Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today, we are diving deep into the story of two of America's most infamous outlaws, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. Their names are synonymous with the Great Depression era, a time of desperation that pushed many to the fringes of society. But who were they really, beyond the sensationalized headlines and the romanticized Hollywood portrayals? Were they cold-blooded killers, or were they star-crossed lovers trapped by circumstance? In the heart of the Great Depression, when dust storms choked the plains and poverty gripped the nation, two figures emerged from the shadows to become America's most infamous, and strangely, most romanticized outlaws. Their names were Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. But how did this young couple from the slums of West Dallas transform from petty thieves into the most wanted criminals in the country? Their story forever etched into the fabric of American folklore. Let's unravel the tale of Bonnie and Clyde. Our story begins not with the hail of gunfire, but with two young Texans dreaming of a life beyond their desperate circumstances. Clyde Chestnut Barrow, born in 1909, was the fifth of 7 children in a poor farming family. From a young age, he was drawn to a life of crime, starting with petty theft and escalating to carjacking. His older brother, Buck, was his early partner in crime, and Clyde's rap sheet grew steadily through his teenage years. He was small in stature, but possessed a cold nerve and a burning ambition to make a name for himself, vowing he'd rather die than return to the brutal conditions of prison life. Bonnie Elizabeth Parker, born in 1910, was a different story. A bright student who loved poetry and dreamed of stardom, she was known for her striking looks and fiery spirit. At just 16, she dropped out of high school to marry a small-time criminal named Roy Thornton. The marriage was a disaster, and while they never divorced, Thornton's frequent imprisonments meant Bonnie was largely on her own. She was working as a waitress in Dallas in January 1930 when a mutual friend introduced her to the charming 20-year-old Clyde Barrow. For Bonnie, it was instant. She was captivated by his rebellious nature, and he, by her loyalty and ride-or-die attitude. Their romance, however, was immediately tested. Just a few weeks after they met, Clyde was arrested and sentenced to 14 years at the notoriously harsh Eastham prison farm. The brutality he experienced there changed him forever. In a desperate attempt to avoid the back-breaking labor, he had another inmate chop off 2 of his toes with an axe. Unbeknownst to him, his mother's pleas had already secured his parole. He was released just 6 days later, a changed man, limping and filled with the seething desire for revenge against the law enforcement system he blamed for his suffering. Reunited, Bonnie and Clyde began their legendary crime spree. Initially, their targets were small-time robbing gas stations and grocery stores for a few dollars here and there. They were joined at various times by others, forming the Barrow Gang. Notable members included Clyde's brother Buck and his wife Blanche, as well as a young getaway driver named Dudley Jones. Their modus operandi was simple: hit fast, grab what you can, and get out. Clyde's exceptional driving skills and his preference for the powerful Ford V8 made them incredibly difficult to catch as they crisscrossed state lines, exploiting the fact that law enforcement agencies had limited jurisdiction. What truly set Bonnie and Clyde apart, however, was their flair for the dramatic and the unexpected role of the media. In 1933, after a chaotic shootout with police in Joplin, Missouri, the gang was forced to flee, leaving behind most of their possessions. Among the items recovered by police was a roll of undeveloped film. The photos were a revelation. They didn't show hardened criminals, but a playful, romantic couple. Bonnie, cigar in mouth, defiantly posed with a pistol. Clyde leaned coolly against their stolen car. These images were splashed across newspapers nationwide, transforming them from faceless thugs into rebellious celebrities. They were young, in love, and living life on their own terms, a fantasy that resonated with a public weary of economic hardship and disillusioned with the government. Bonnie also contributed to their myth with her poetry. Her most famous work, The Story of Bonnie and Clyde, was a self-aware ballad that romanticized their life on the run while foreshadowing their violent end. She sent it to newspapers, further crafting their public image. They were no longer just criminals. They were folk heroes, modern-day Robin Hoods in the public imagination, even though they rarely, if ever, gave their stolen money to the poor. But the reality of their lives was far from glamorous. It was a desperate existence of sleeping in cars, eating cold food, and constantly looking over their shoulders. And as their notoriety grew, so did the violence. Their small-time robberies escalated into bank heists, and shootouts with the law became more frequent and deadly. Over their 2-year spree, the Barrow Gang was responsible for the deaths of at least 9 police officers and several civilians. The public's perception began to shift from fascination to fear. The romantic couple from the photographs were now seen as cold-blooded killers. The law was closing in. Leading the hunt was a legendary, no-nonsense Texas Ranger named Frank Hammer. Hammer was a different breed of lawman. He meticulously studied the gang's movements, their habits, and their family connections. He knew they often traveled in a predictable circuit through Texas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma to visit family. Hammer assembled a posse of lawmen from Texas and Louisiana, determined to end the Barrow Gang's reign of terror not with an arrest, but with an ambush. He got his chance in May 1934. Hammer learned that Bonnie and Clyde were planning to visit the family of gang member Henry Methvin in Bienville Parish, Louisiana. He anticipated their route and set a trap on a rural road near the town of Gibbsland. On the morning of May 23, 1934, as Clyde's stolen Ford V8 approached, the posse opened fire. There was no warning, no call to surrender. The officers unleashed a relentless barrage of over 130 bullets into the car. Bonnie and Clyde died instantly, their bodies riddled with wounds. In the car, authorities found an arsenal of weapons, several state license plates, and Bonnie's final poem. Their deaths were as sensational as their lives. Thousands flocked to the small Louisiana town to see the bullet-riddled car and the bodies of the infamous outlaws. It was a grim, chaotic spectacle that marked the definitive end of an era. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow were criminals, responsible for a trail of robbery and murder. Yet, their story endures. They captured the imagination of a nation at its lowest point, becoming symbols of rebellion against a system that many felt had failed them. Their youth, their love, and their dramatic, violent end created a powerful myth that has been retold in countless books, songs, and films. They were a product of their time, a desperate, dangerous, and uniquely American story of love, crime, and the search for freedom, no matter the cost. Drop a like and subscribe to my channel.